Are we good to move?
We're clear.
I got you, sir.
Well, welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. The shots heard around the world, the fist pump seen around the world. A day that will live in American history, like so many days, sadly, that we've seen in the past. An assassination attempt on President Donald Trump within one brief head turn of an inch or less of a certain fatal shot. I'm Randy Tobler. Welcome to Wake Up Mid-Missouri. We're going to get reaction from Stephanie Bell, from Hannah, from John Marsh, from Brian Hauswirth, and of course from you all morning. What happened? What does it tell us about America 2024? What does it tell us about this election cycle? And what does it tell us about the RNC convention, which now starts this afternoon? Stephanie, your reaction.
It's still, I've watched it over and over and over, I think, as all of us have. And it's still hard to watch. It's really tough.
Hannah.
So I was a little late to the party. I was about 10, 15 minutes late to the news. And just going back and watching the video sort of after the fact, it's hard to believe in a way that that's where we're at today. But on another hand, it's not surprising. So it was kind of the whole spectrum of emotions in between there. You know, of course, we heard almost right away that he was most likely fine. And I appreciated that we were able to have that information so quickly. But it was still scary to think that, you know, like you said, millimeters, inches, whatever, away from something really tragic happening.
John Marsh, what was going through your mind?
Well,
then?
I think after I got over the initial shock of it, it kind of took me back to being a kid, being in Los Angeles when Bobby Kennedy was shot and killed when he was out on the campaign trail. But this whole thing, the shooter was within 150 yards of the former president. And now the Secret Service is saying they don't plan to step up security at the Republican National Convention. I'm like, let's hope you have some big deal security in place then.
We sight our rifles in at 100 yards, and that was, what, 130-ish yards? I mean, you got to be kidding me.
They said it was under 150, you know, in the military, the Army, you know, to qualify, you got to be able to hit something at 150 yards.
I think we're, as Ronald Reagan said in his The Speech, it's a moment for choosing. Americans have to decide if they're going to watch, abide by, pay heed to the media, the surrogates of, and in some cases, the political top figures who insist, and in the wake of this heinous act, clearly triggered by, we may never know, but no one, I don't care how crazy of a lone wolf you are, doesn't wake up, no one wakes up on a Saturday morning and decides to, and it apparently had been going on for a while, was stealing his father's gun and a demolition site that he was looking at. He was building bombs. There's 350 million targets in this country. No one wakes up on a Saturday morning and just on a whim decides they're going to go down and shoot at a presidential candidate who is the most persecuted, the most demonized, the most vilified, the most misrepresented candidate that I can recall in my lifetime. There's been candidates that have been vilified. I've been a part of some vilification of their character or of their policy.
How many times do they call Trump Hitler?
There you go. And in the wake of that, we see the New York Times shows the iconic photo with the fist pump, the security service around him, the Secret Service around him, the flag in the background. Where is it? It's gone. It's gone.
Edited straight out.
The Denver Post, I think it was the Denver Post.
It was.
Says, shooter dead. And up in the little corner, Trump, injured or escapes an injury. Unbelievable.
Even our own president, who waited, 2 hours after the shooting and then was asked about it and wouldn't call it an assassination attempt and just said, well, I don't know all the facts. What?
Yes.
We all saw it. Look with your own eyes. It was like he had just woken up. I was, I think I'm with Hannah in that I wasn't completely surprised, given the hatred for Trump after hearing the news. But I mean, maybe I shouldn't be surprised by the national news media, but it was another level. And I think what we're seeing, and there's a lot of talk on social media. A lot of folks came out that night, started endorsing Trump. People were saying, I've never seen more MAGA hats on the street on Sunday. And I think for a lot of people, the assassination attempt, in conjunction with the way the media handled it, they're saying, and with the way that Trump handled it, they said, if he can stand up and raise his fists after that, the very least I can do is support him publicly. And I think we're going to see it in the polls. I think the RNC is going to be off the charts this week. I think people are going to be so happy to be there. I think people are going to watch it wall to wall. And I'm excited, but I think this is the end of the campaign for Biden.
Well, and I know pretty much instantly on social media, Twitter specifically, right away I was seeing tweets saying, oh, it couldn't have been loud enough to be a real gun. It was probably just a BB gun. Or he just got grazed. He didn't get shot, so what's the big deal? Things like that. And I had to sit back and go, is this where we're at in our society?
Yes.
I almost had a Randy Tobler moment. I know I give you a lot of grief for having those or asking those questions about where society and culture is at right now. But it's like, are we at this point where we lack so much humanity that a former president being shot at is instantly written off as no big deal?
You bring up a very good point, Hannah. A very good point. But I would also point out that we have elected officials on the Democratic side like David Tyson Smith, who forcefully came out and condemned it. With the mayor of Columbia, who's a progressive, Barbara Buffaloe, who's going to join us, did. But I did see some of the same things suggest. I even saw people on Twitter thinking it was staged.
Yeah, and I'm just talking about what I saw on Twitter,
Hang on.
not even from people that I follow.
I'm going to interrupt here. Mayor Barbara Buffaloe is going to be with us later.
Correct.
David Tyson Smith is always welcome on this program, and I respect them. But when the President of the United States, he had time to come out yesterday, and in that Oval Office statement, he delved into whataboutism. He talked about Charlotte.
You're talking about the president.
And now I'm going to talk about Mayor Buffaloe and David Tyson Smith and all you good Democrats who are now calling for unity. Where have you been? Where have you been? And look, I'm just respectfully asking this. Where have you been when this was going on at your party's national political leadership?
You got to be ready to throw a punch. You have to be ready to throw a punch.
Donald Trump, I think you need to go back and punch him in the face.
That I thought he should have punched him in the face.
I feel like punching him.
I'd like to take him behind the gym if I were in high school.
If we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
Take him out now.
Okay.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
And you push back on them, and you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Please, get up in the face of some Congress people.
People will do what they do.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
All right. I'm a part of a profession that is regularly criticized for not policing ourselves. Doctors do a better job. When a doctor's out there giving too many opioids, how come you guys defend him when you're asked to show up in court and you're an expert witness for the defense? Excuse me. All of the voices on the left that are now coming out and saying, well, Donald Trump said they were good people on both sides. How disingenuous. The President of the United States referred to that misinformation which has been spewed by the media, and he extended it yesterday. Where are the voices calling out President Joe Biden, who has recently, Friday night in a call to Democratic donors said, put a bullseye on him? Are you kidding me? Now, Representative Smith, Mayor Buffaloe, you were influential people. Can we hear your voice denigrating Chuck Schumer, Maxine Waters, Cory Booker, Joe Biden. Do I need to say it more? I'm sorry. When you look at the degree of personal animus rhetoric, you can't even begin to compare the amount that Donald Trump has said about lazy, sleepy Joe, Nancy Pelosi, this, criminal Joe. Are you kidding me? That's not calling him Hitler. That's not calling him an existential threat to society, and he needs to be taken out. I've had it with people after the fact coming in, and again, this is with due respect to you people. Where were you when these voices were going on? These voices were turning up the heat in the minds of crazy, paranoid, loner, bullied when they were in high school, sick kids. Where were your voices? Will we be heard now? Where were your voices when Norah O'Donnell yesterday and others on across the media, they're doubling down on it. Well, it's Donald Trump. He lit the fuse, don't you know? J6. Oh, peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol. That's not take out Joe Biden. It's not take out Democrat leaders. This moral equivalence between the inflammatory, inciting rhetoric that has gone on the part of the Democrat Party, its highest operatives, its media puppets, has got to stop. And Democrats at all levels, I don't care if you're a city councilman, a county commissioner, I don't care who you are. If you don't call it out, and if you don't apologize for not having called it out in the past, shame on you. I'm done.
Well, Representative Tyson Smith has said, and it's about as fired up as I've ever seen you, by
I'm
the way.
sorry, man. And now everyone's like, oh, let's have a kumbaya. I condemn this. Where were you when I got another 30 seconds of that stuff? Well, where are their voices then? I called Donald Trump out. Randy Tobler calls him out. Honest people on the right call him out. Donald, how come you use foul and vulgar language? And I'll continue to call him out. That's not the same as saying take him out. I'm done.
David Tyson Smith's tweet read in part, quote, violence has absolutely no place in our democracy. I unequivocally condemn any attempt on the life of Donald Trump or any political figure. We must strive for peaceful discourse and unity as we uphold the core values of our democratic society, end of quote. And I linked to Representative Tyson Smith's full statement, the mayor, and Congressman Alford as well.
Too little, too late, guys.
I'd just point out one other very quick thing.
Too little, too late.
I talked about this at the start of yesterday. I filled in for Mike Murphy on 93.9 The Eagle on the Columbia Buzz show on Sunday morning. We had several people call in about President Reagan's visit in 1987. Not about the politics, but contrasting the security for that to what I think allowing a gunman to get up on a roof. They actually sealed the manholes in Columbia in 1987. Well, it was much, much different.
It's time for the Daily DC Rundown.
this week, other than former President Trump's speech. In an exclusive interview with the Washington Examiner, Trump says this is a chance to bring the whole country together, even the world together. The speech will be a lot different than it would have been 2 days ago.
Of course, that speech will occur on Thursday night. I think I saw that the Boone County Republicans are having a watch party. I, for one, will be watching it, and that's what gets us into our daily DC rundown. Now, they had already been talking about the security at conventions for months before this weekend's events, Randy. And so the security is already pretty tight. If you've looked at the Milwaukee Journal, they've got...
it's tight there.
Yeah, well, they've got... And folks arriving yesterday, I think, were even some taken aback in that there's a vehicle screening perimeter that's blocks long, and then there is a pedestrian restricted perimeter that's blocks long. There are certain areas that are designated for protests. They've got restricted river access, and so they've had a plan in place for a very long time. So
you can feel media's frustration. They're talking like, "Oh, we're struggling to get in."
Yeah. And they said, they said give yourself plenty of time. You're going to need it because they are doing the best they can to keep everyone safe. And it's nice to hear that I've seen some delegates interviewed as well, saying that all of the protocols make them feel like this week's going to be a safe event and that they feel safe being there. And so that is good to hear. Also, what we're expecting this week, of course, we are waiting on that VP pick. Again, Trump's speech is on Thursday night, but yeah, that kicks off in earnest today. So excited to watch that happen. Also today, we have President Biden's going to sit down with Lester Holt. He's been doing these kind of one-off interviews. None of them have been going well, and I keep thinking he's thinking I'm going to keep trying, and eventually I'm going to get a good one, and then I'm just going to point back to that one good one, and he hasn't had a good one yet, Randy.
If I try more harder, it might get betterer.
Yeah.
Maybe
it's not going well. Well, also what we're learning, we've got folks in Congress who are saying we have to have a full-blown investigation into the breakdown after this weekend's events. Kimberly Cheadle has been called to testify about the shooting on July
And they've got a theme for each night, correct?
They do. I'm going to have to look that up.
I think
Make America Safe Again. One is Make America Wealthy Again.
Yeah, and then the last one, of course, is Make America Great Again.
Which, did you notice when Biden had his comments last night? I watched it live. He almost said, "We're going to make America," and then he had to pause and come up with other words. He almost said, "Make America Great Again."
Here is Governor Josh Shapiro talking about the innocent man, the 50-year-old firefighter, father of two, who shielded his family and was shot in the head and perished at that rally. There were two gravely injured men as well, who I understand now are in stable condition, at least as of last evening. I haven't checked this morning. Here it is.
We lost a fellow Pennsylvanian last night, Corey Comparator. I just spoke to Corey's wife and Corey's two daughters. Corey was a girl dad. Corey was a firefighter. Corey went to church every Sunday. Corey loved his community. Most especially, Corey loved his family. Corey was an avid supporter of the former president. I was so excited to be there last night with him in the community. I asked Corey's wife if it would be okay for me to share that we spoke. She said yes. She also asked that I share with all of you that Corey died a hero.
I became enraged in the first segment, and it was less over Donald Trump because he's alive than it was. I don't know if you saw it, ladies and gentlemen. Did you see it, Stephanie, John, Hannah? Did you see there was a citizen who took an image of this man with his brain dripping out of his head on the bleachers being carried off. The emergency room doctor who attended to him, who gave him mouth-to-mouth, who gave him CPR, was bloodied. There was nothing to save. He was gone.
Pretty graphic pictures, for sure.
I saw that, and I thought, this is not an AR-15 problem. This is not a Sleepy Joe problem. This is a problem of, we've come to a point in this country where we don't recognize right and wrong. Leaders at the highest level cannot parse the difference. Our media has lost its compass. This morning, yesterday, the newspaper, Stephanie, we referenced it in the first segment. I'm still reeling from this. One of our texters says, look at the Washington Post front page. You look at any of the alleged legacy media. Now they're the embarrassment media. They're an embarrassment to this country. A presidential candidate, forget that, a former president, came within an inch of his life. An iconic photo, the phoenix rising from the ash. I care not what his party is. He'd just been shot. And he rises up and fist pumps to let everyone know he's right, just like Ronald Reagan did after he was nearly mortally wounded in 1981. Remember him hanging out the balcony of the hospital waving? It's like, I'm okay.
Hannah and I do not remember, but...
Okay. John, you remember it?
Certainly, yeah, he did.
Well,
and they initially didn't think he was badly wounded, but he came within inches of his life.
And this brave firefighter... And there were reports of others that did that. Selena Zito, a veteran reporter, reports how the Trump forward man
jumped on top
of her and her daughter, who were there within 4 feet of the dais, and covered them and said, stay down, stay down. And she wanted to be a reporter and take pictures. And look, guys, has Donald Trump said, all of you lefties out there, and anyone who's complicit with the argument that somehow the Donald Trump rhetoric is ultimately the root cause of this problem? Did Donald Trump's rhetoric cause the shooter that almost took Steve Scalise's life? Did Donald Trump's rhetoric cause the Antifa riots, the BLM riots? I ask you, objectively, Has he said some inflammatory things? Do all politicians say some inflammatory things? Has he asked for anyone to directly been taken out, like the montage we played in the first segment? I just ask you, be objective. Is a Cooper Mini the same as a Ford Expedition? Is a shanty down by the river the same as a mansion on the top of the river? There are differences in life. There are differences in the rhetoric. And for this media, and frankly, yesterday, this president, to somehow make some equivalence over the things that Donald Trump has said versus what has been said up and down the political spectrum, you've got to be kidding me. I challenge you. And the minute that someone tries to go into whataboutism about the rhetoric, because that's been the talk so far, is about the rhetoric, not about the guns. That's coming. It won't be long before Joe Biden talks about guns.
Oh, it's already all over Twitter. People have said, we should ban these rifles. And my favorite response so far has said, we should also ban assassinations.
There you go. Make them illegal.
I just.
Yeah.
What are these people thinking?
You know what they're thinking? They're thinking we're stupid. And because Donald Trump has their power in his crosshairs and has the power of the regulatory state in his crosshairs, they can't take it. And they don't care if tacitly, and again, I mentioned Barbara Buffaloe, I mentioned David Tyson Smith. It's not personal about them. I use them as an example of where are all of the people in the where's Stephen Weber? Stephen, where were you when Maxine Waters was saying take him out? Well, how come it was a crime for they pinned the tail on the Gabby Gifford shooting on something that had targets, right, on various precincts, right? That had nothing to do with it. That was a political metaphor. And now suddenly Joe Biden saying that Donald Trump, we need to put him in the bullseye. Oh, that's okay. Come on, guys.
Well, and I don't think they're also recognizing the difference in responses, because had this been, a shooting, with any Democrat involved, right, there would be riots, there would be fires, there would be all sorts of stuff. Instead, what did folks on the right do? They put on their MAGA hat. They waved the American flag. They got down on their knees and they prayed, and they raised, what are we at, $3 million for the victims in 24 hours? I mean, I saw it put this way on Twitter by Cody Sanchez: builders versus burn it downers, donators versus destroyers, rally together versus riot. We're just built different.
All of those knuckle-dragging people that cling to their Bibles and their guns, as Barack Obama said, people that identify as Republican are unequivocally higher donors than are the others. What does it tell you about people? Who has the generous heart? Who has the hateful heart? I'm just asking you objectively. If you all of you people out there who identify as Democrat and progressives and leftists and tolerant, and how come you people on the right are so hateful? You know what? You guys are all about science. Follow the science. You know, one of the tenets, all of you physics people, you guys are about the science. You don't believe in God and metaphysical, spiritual things. You're all about the science. You know what? The science says for every action, there's an equal reaction. Where have most of the reactions been? They've been against Steve Scalise, against abortion clinic protesters who are now in jail because they protest a clinic peacefully. All they did was occupy a clinic. An old grandma, 74 years old, in prison. And what does the Democrat-led justice system do? They jail people like that. And Maxine Waters and everyone winks and blinks and tacitly approves of Antifa, BLM riots, destroying our cities, killing cops, 20-some-odd of them, 23 if I remember correctly. They tacitly stand by and say, well, that's all in the name of social justice. That's okay. You know what? The rhetoric is the action. I'll concede that. Then if you measure the reaction and you scale it to the rhetoric, I can come to no conclusion that it's the rhetoric on the left that scaled into violence has led to much more violence against many more people that identify as conservatives. Tell me that that's not the truth. Tell me that the reporting belies that. It doesn't. And here's this. This is a guy, I wanted to get to it. I don't know if I can. I won't get it. There was an eyewitness there who was at a Trump rally 4 years ago. We'll play it when we come back. He was there 4 years ago at a Trump rally during the 20 campaign. I guess it was maybe an airport, and there were hangars all around, the big, metal buildings house the planes.
They've done one here.
And
hangars.
yeah, and he talks about the difference between the difference between what he saw then and what he saw Saturday. And we just need to talk about this. And we need to talk about what is it? Is it more important to have 30% of our Secret Service as being women who tend to be of shorter stature and a little more fragile in terms of pure physical prowess than men on average? That's a fact. Sorry, you science people. That's a fact. That's not sexism. It's a fact. And I'm not going to hear that it's sexism. And so we'll hear a little bit from her too. And it's time, when Donald Trump said fight back, you know what? I took that to heart. It's time to fight back. And I mean fight with words. Fight the lies with truth. Fight the inflammatory rhetoric with, as Melania Trump said, fight it with love. But in love, say, I challenge you. You need to hear the hard stuff. Like the Vitae Foundation says. What is it? If you love someone, you tell them something that they don't want to hear, something like that.
Love them enough to tell them the truth.
There you go. Well, all you progressives out there, I love you enough. I really do. We're going to tell you the truth. You're flat out wrong. If you think that Donald Trump's rhetoric is what caused him to come within an inch of his life, you are flat, period, out, period, wrong, period. And we're not going to be complicit with anymore. We're not going to listen to your lies. We're going to stop them in your tracks. Your rhetoric, that is. And I just can't believe what I'm seeing in the media, the mainstream media. I cannot believe it this morning. Hey, don't forget, Scott Faughn will be here at 7:08-ish. Mayor Barbara Buffaloe at 7:35-ish. Ron Fitzwater at 8:08.
And that big project.
Louie on that. We're glad that Scott Faughn joins us now, of course, publisher of Missouri Times and host of This Week in Missouri Politics. How you doing, Scott? Your reaction? What are you thinking now that you've had 36 hours to process this?
It's just a gut punch, and it, you just have this kind of feeling in your gut. This is either the point where we step back from the precipice, or it's the harbinger of things to come. And if I had to guess right or die, I might pick the second one. But it is sobering and just, I think it hits people differently, because I bet you there were folks truly shocked by the Kennedy assassination. I really think if you look at both sides, you can't be just too shocked that something like this happened. I mean, Donald Trump's rhetoric is over the top. It's what got him to the dance. The mainstream media's rhetoric about him is so over the top and ridiculous. It's the best thing for his campaign, but it also radicalizes people. And I don't know if this young man was radicalized by that. I wouldn't pretend to know, but I know a lot of other people that are. Donald Trump makes sane people crazy. He makes sane conservatives crazy and sane liberals crazy. And it is, you just hope, first of all, what a miracle it was that the man's alive, and what an amazing way he handled that challenge. I mean, one of the greatest challenges that not just a politician, heck, a man could face, a human being being in that spot and the way he rose back up. I'll be candid with you. If you know me, I'm pretty much the same guy on Wake Up Bid, Missouri, that I am at High Street Pub, that I am on This Week in Missouri Politics, that I am at Madison's Cafe having supper. And I've taken grief on this show. I don't think Joe Biden's a bad guy. I think he's a well-meaning guy. And I've said that much to the scorn of some folks. I do think it's time to step back and say, hey, people can be a good guy that you could passionately disagree with and hope to lose an election, but you don't have to hate them. And I hope that's a lesson that we take from this, but I sure doubt that it is.
Scott, I got a little enraged in the first segment because I had just early this morning, viewed a very graphic image of Corey Comparator, the firefighter who was shot in the head, and I saw his brains dripping out, and I was just it just triggered me, frankly, and I went off. I wasn't going off specifically on Mayor Barbara Buffaloe and David Tyson Smith and Stephen Weber and every other Democrat that I could think of if I was to think of them at every level. But I'm sorry, this whataboutism, it goes on in the media. You're a media guy. It sickens me that the media, the Democrats, tacitly stood by when the President of the United States was calling Donald Trump a fascist, told donors the other night that we need to put him in a bullseye. We played a whole half of a minute and 25 montage of, for years, people calling Donald Trump, saying, take him out. He needs to be eliminated, one of them says. And to try to, who are the people that are getting shot, who are being, as you say, inflamed and incited? They're people taking it out on Republicans, on conservatives, Steve Scalise, Brett Kavanaugh, Donald Trump, and you don't hear that you don't see that kind of reaction, because the level of the rhetoric, no matter what they say about Donald Trump, the level of the rhetoric and the scope and the breadth and the depth of it coming from the left far outpaces what's coming from the right. But yet people don't call it out at all levels of the Democrat Party. Where are their voices? Now they're coming out and saying, we can't, I condemn this. We have to have love. We have to use. Where were their voices when the buildings were burning down and Kamala Harris was saying, contribute to the bail fund? What say you?
I think that there's literally blood on a lot of people's hands. And if that's whataboutism, then fine. I think a lot of Donald Trump's rhetoric is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And beneath the president of the United States. I think that, I'll be honest with you. I've heard Joe Biden say some of those things. I've always felt he was a little more reserved, probably just by his nature and his age. I think the mainstream media, when they make him out to be Hitler, Donald Trump is not Hitler. Donald Trump is not going to end democracy. Donald Trump, all the stupid, over the top stuff. I mean, and again, I'll sit here. I'll be honest with you, and I have on this show, much to my Twitter inbox can tell you. I think Joe Biden's done a poor job as president of the United States. I think the results are not good. I won't be voting for him. I personally believe he's a good man who's simply incoherent and exhibited that on national television for an hour and a half a few weeks ago. But I don't think he's a bad guy. I've seen no evidence that he profited from his son. I think he's got a different vision, essentially for people like me and you paying more taxes so other people don't have to work as hard. And you know what? That is a perfectly historically logical, consistent view of some folks in the world. I have a different view that I believe in. Not a bad guy. And Donald Trump is not Hitler. And Donald Trump is not Mussolini. And Donald Trump is not going to end democracy. Donald Trump has a view for this country. It's a little different from mine. It's a lot different from Joe Biden's. And he's going to fight for that. And I tell you what I really hope. I really hope is I talked to some folks who are kind of in the outside of the Trump orbit. His daughter came to see him Sunday night. And I think most folks would agree. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, his daughter Ivanka is an incredibly impressive woman. And her message was, Dad, pivot from this. Now, this is secondhand gossip, but I think it also, assuming it's true, could be a great thing. Donald Trump does not have to be the rabble rouser getting attention, doing crazy antics or saying outlandish things. Donald Trump now can be the leader of this country.
Okay.
Donald Trump doesn't have to do any. He is the front runner. He is the favorite for president. All he has to do now is be a statesman, and I believe he can. And I believe if his daughter's back at his side, I think that's very helpful. I think she's very talented, and hopefully we'll see Donald Trump 2.0 come out of this.
Well, and of course, Donald Trump confirmed in an interview that his speech will be completely different after this weekend's events. And we're expecting that speech on Thursday. Now, the RNC convention kicks off today. And after our show Friday, we learned that Missouri was going to do another delegate swap, and we were back to the original slate of delegates.
What a mess.
But I'm thinking, I think people haven't, although we've seen a lot of arguing, and I think it's the grassroots slate that's now going and not the establishment people. And I'm like, I thought I knew the people on both sides of this slate. And so, I want to list some names of people who are now not going and who I guess are on the quote unquote establishment slate. People like Sarah Walsh, Becky Arps, Jacob Shelp was going to go, Jen Bukowski, Eric Burleson. I'm like, he's not a Rhino establishment guy.
No.
I mean, what were we? So there are plenty of I think we were going to have solid conservatives
Stephanie,
on either side.
You're wrong. No. You're by the definition of many Republicans, Eric Burleson is a Rhino. By virtue of being elected to government and serving your state or your country, you're a Rhino. That's all it is. The Rhino is a hilarious word. If you're dumb enough to use it, then if you're dumb enough to buy it on whatever they're selling, you deserve to be parted with your money.
But Bill Eigel and Jay Ashcroft are going, and they're both elected officials. And isn't it bizarre you're grassroots, but you're an elected official taking a spot away from like a young volunteer? I mean, what?
It's not bizarre. It's just dishonest. Look, let me help you out here in this governor's race. Bill Eigel's been on the government dole for 8 years. Any problem in this state, as a member of the Missouri Synod, he's had a chance to address. He is the establishment. Jay Ashcroft's daddy was literally the United States Attorney General. He's the establishment. Mike Keogh ran the Highway Commission, was a state Senate lieutenant governor. The truth is, the Republican Party has nothing to do with conservative or liberal anymore, establishment, or whatever you want to call it, grassroots. All it is angry people versus people that aren't quite as angry. And they shout at each other, and they don't give a damn to go talk to anybody in the middle or God forbid, a Democrat and try to convince them of their ideas. They want to rig rules, rig games, and essentially try to impose their will. But it's just the angriest versus other people right now.
We only have 2 minutes left here, Scott, and I want to let everyone know that I'm sure you're going to be talking about this on your show, in your newspaper, and you're listening, folks, to Scott Faughn joining us, Wake Up Mid-Missouri, here on a tumultuous Monday morning.
Scott, you talked about Donald Trump spinning back on the rhetoric and all. We've seen a pretty heated governor's race and CD3 race in Missouri. Do you worry about the rhetoric hitting those races and coming to that level with everybody's accusing everybody else of selling Missouri farmland to the Chinese, et cetera?
John, you've covered a lot of campaigns, and I figure in every single one of them, somebody feels like their opponent lied about them. I think a bigger problem is politicians are no different than radio stations or car dealers or whatever. They copy what works, and that over-the-top rhetoric worked. The media copies what works. Calling Donald Trump the modern-day Stalin worked for them. It made them money. It raised them money, and I don't worry that this particular thing. I mean, look, these politicians are a reflection of us at the end of the day. They will do whatever we want to get elected. So anything that you think is outside the box, if it works, it's because the voters. It worked on them. We have to look at our. I mean, I guess I'm an old school Republican that believes in personal responsibility. I am, as Hank Williams Jr. would say, an old dinosaur. This is on us. This whole thing's on us. And until we can be, the folks that look ourselves in the eye and admit it, it'll never change. So, I think the rhetoric and all that will not change because of who the politicians are. It'll change because of the voters want something different. And then the politicians will comport to it. They are a reflection of us, and we have to own that.
Scott, just a quick thought from you. The new Remington, Missouri Scout poll came out this weekend in the U.S. Senate race, Democratic side. Lucas Kuntz, according to the poll, 39%. Carla May, 10%. You surprised by that?
No, I mean, Carl hasn't spent any money. Lucas Kuntz spent a lot of money. I could tell you this, if the Democrats met both of them, they'd be voting for Carla May. If I voted the Democrat Party, I'd vote for Carla May. She's a very experienced lawmaker, Lucas Kuntz. I mean, but Brian, at the end of the day, I mean, it's, which turkey is going to vote for Thanksgiving? I mean, Josh Hawley's going to be reelected now. I mean, whatever year it was going to be for Republicans, after that debate, it got better. After Donald Trump's response to nearly being killed, I mean, I don't think the Democrat nomination for a statewide office is merely a consolation prize and an afterthought now, and what will be a blowout.
Very good. Thank you, Scott.
Scott Faughn, once again, your stein of knowledge has quenched our thirst for it. We appreciate your analysis as always.
I appreciate you guys. I was very interested to listen this morning on what is a historic time. I've been sitting by the radio all morning. Thank you, guys.
Hey, thanks, Scott. We'll talk to you next week.
And if you missed Randy's opening remarks this morning, I just posted that to the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page.
I stand by them. Coming up, what's out with Hannah?
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
When I think about players taking a knee during the national anthem, I think that the very thing that they're taking a knee on, I think is not being taken in consideration. I think everyone's kind of focusing on the flag and the national anthem opposed to what's really the cause of why he's taking a knee.
What do you think of the NFL players taking a knee during the national anthem? I think the cause behind it is true, but I don't like the execution of it.
What do I think about NFL players taking a knee during the national anthem? I don't think that's the right forum to take a knee. I think there's a lot of issues that needs to be addressed. I don't know that particular forum is the right one to do that.
What do I think about NFL players taking a knee during the national anthem? I think there's better ways to make a point, make a statement. Maybe use some of your millions of dollars you spend on mansions and cars and actually put it towards a cause. Use your time and effort in changing something. I don't think kneeling on a field is going to change anything except be divisive.
What do I think about the NFL players taking a knee during the national anthem? It's a form of peaceful protest. I think they're open to do, whatever they would like to do. So, they're just viewed in a higher standard than everybody because of the platform that they play on, and I don't feel like that's completely fair to them being able to use their freedom of speech.
What do I think of the NFL players taking a knee during the national anthem? Protest is the foundation of our country. You can do whatever you want to do. Now, those players are going to have to be accountable to their employers. They're going to have to work that out. Some people are going to be mad about people taking knees. I don't know. I take knees. I stand up. That's how I worship, so that's it.
It's 7:25. Time for What's Hot with Hannah. What's going on, Hannah?
We all know on the show that we love our sleep.
Oh, yeah.
We don't get enough of it, especially Stephanie. I get made fun of a lot for taking naps because I'm like an overgrown toddler. But there's an inmate in Texas prison systems that's actually suing for his right to sleep. Now, he's been fighting this battle for over 10 years in the court system. He's serving a life sentence in Texas prisons. And, of course, the Texas Observer article that I'm referencing did not mention why. But as he was 20 years into his sentence when he decided to pursue this case, he claims that he has health conditions like high blood pressure, migraines, he has seizures, and he's claiming that not getting a good night's rest greatly impacts him and makes his health conditions much worse. Basically, a couple hours after he goes to bed, the guards are doing a head count. There's normal chatter from the inmates who maybe stay up later or don't sleep. And they keep the lights on a lot in prison all through the night. And so it's just hard to sleep. And he's been working his way through the court system, trying every appeal and route he can. He finally has some representation in the form of a lawyer to maybe help him get this case along the finish line or across the finish line. But the courts have told him before that sleep is not a constitutional right. And I just thought that was interesting.
Well, is that the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of good sleep? I don't know. But that's a declaration thing anyway, I don't know. What do you say? Okay, counselor, is it a constitutional right to get good sleep?
Apparently the court said no. I sure feel like it should be protected. No, I mean, you're in prison. You lose.
What about the cruel and unusual punishment angle on something like that?
I'm not buying that either.
How many of us have been in hospitals and either on the patient side or on the stethoscope side and have to either be awakened or waken someone to get vital signs? And, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, but I got to know you're just post-op 8 hours, Leave me alone, I want to sleep.
In Texas, the Fifth Circuit courts have actually sided with this inmate, and they are notoriously very conservative. And so I think everyone was kind of surprised that they sided with him. Yeah. So it's sort of a let's see what's next type of thing. But I'm curious to see if this gets any traction. I don't know.
Well, if it's like a Second Amendment right, don't you lose that when you're a convicted felon? I don't know.
He says while he's been in prison, he's been taking lots of law classes to try to understand the system to help his case. And the lawyer that he just now got has been pretty impressed with what he was able to do on his own. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It really is. I mean, does he have a right to get some sleep? Because we know bad sleep does contribute to those conditions, to hypertension, cardiovascular disease. I mean, it really does. So, well, I don't know. We'll have to see where that goes. Hey, we want to cover something that Stephanie has pointed out, and we won't do it next segment because Mayor Barbara Buffaloe is going to join us talking about there's some budget discussions coming up tonight, the railroad discussion, some other things. And I want to talk to her about my maintenance that, gosh, I'm glad she condemned the shooting, the assassination attempt on Trump, but where were her voices and others in her party otherwise? But Stephanie, a major poll that was reported by NBC News, apparently there was a little typo.
Whoopsie.
We'll talk about that a little bit later in the program. Lots coming up. I don't know if we have enough time. You'll have to listen to see. Stay tuned for more on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Mayor Barbara Buffaloe now, and Ron Fitzwater a little later. 7:10. Barbara Buffaloe joins us as she does every third Monday of the month here on Wake Up. How you doing, Mayor?
I'm okay, Randy. How about yourself?
I'm good. Hey, I want to apologize in a way, but challenge you in a way, because I got a little angered in my first segment on the voices of people in the Democrat Party and in the left, and I think I would identify you as being a Democrat and more left than most of our audience, that have been relatively quiet in the past when it came to rhetoric that I think in some fairly, and I played a montage, 1 minute and 25 seconds long, from the president to Cory Booker to Maxine Waters to a lot of very high and influential public figures that did not condemn the rhetoric about Donald Trump being Hitler, being a Nazi, being a destruction of society, but now come out, and thankfully you did, and said, you condemned what happened on Saturday. Where were the voices of influential people like you and Representative Smith and candidate Weber and others, all the way up and down the left spectrum? Where were the voices before this kind of a thing happened? Because we have on our side of the fence, I have personally decried Donald Trump's vulgar attitude, his boisterous comments about things. So where were those voices in the previous? And I'm asking you to speak out on that. Where were your voices before?
Yeah, I guess in some of these things, when you're seeing this discourse happening, really related to like a national level, like not even just statewide, but national parties and politics happening. As a mayor of, a small city, usually what I'm keeping my voice to is things related to like Columbia, right? Things that we're seeing happening that are affecting our community and our members. So just like, maybe not making a statement to say something about somebody saying something about somebody else happens on both sides. The same people probably saying things about Biden, and I don't comment on that either. Usually, when I'm thinking about so as you know, like I have no interest in going any farther than mayor. I like to focus on the people of Columbia. So when I got the news though about, Saturday, normally I don't really comment about, federal politics and things happening because I think about how it affects us. But when you have a former president, when you have somebody doing violence against a former president, like that's something that affects our entire nation. That's something that affects Columbia. That's something that we're all seeing. And that's where I'm like, yes, I obviously want to say something. And you always have those moments too. And I have this when this happens, when I get, an incident report about something happening and our police are responding. I know what my role is, and I don't want to further any sort of like misinformation if I don't have all the details. So I know that on Saturday, and it's not like all the mayors get like an update, from the Secret Service or anything. So I'm just following along with everybody else. And so really it's just commenting more to that bigger discourse that you see happening that you don't want to see happen local.
Okay, so it's a scope of influence issue.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll take that. I think
you'll see it sometimes too, where people will be like, why aren't you commenting about, this fighting in the Middle East? And I was like, because the Middle East doesn't care what the mayor of Columbia says.
Yeah. Well, I get it. And I hope
Yeah.
in the future, if we have violence like we saw during BLM and
I
others.
hope we don't have this in the future, Randy. That's the whole point.
But if we see violence in the future that affects cities being burned, when CNN reporters are saying these are peaceful protests, I hope that since it is a city matter, that you will comment on that. Now, Stephanie has a thought.
Tonight, at the city council meeting, you all are planning on voting on this short-term rental ordinance. It seems strange to me, and I know a lot of communities are having the conversation right now. I know Jefferson City's been having it about affordable housing. And so we've got these folks who are offering up short-term rentals, and I think under the ordinance as proposed, it's going to require them to have a city business license, require them to provide insurance over and above what they're already doing, and then also require them, I think, to pay the tax that hotels and motels pay. And so when we think about, how you provide affordable housing and who's providing that affordable housing, a lot of these firms, I think, are trying to do that. So I guess, how is it consistent with wanting to provide affordable housing by putting additional burdens on people who are trying to provide affordable housing?
Well, I guess the question would be your definition of affordable housing. So a short-term rental, by definition, is like you're staying there for under 30 days. So these are traditionally actually rental housing that had been in long-term rental housing or had been in owner-occupied housing. And so what we were seeing is that for some of those, as they're coming off the market from families being able to buy these homes or to afford, we were seeing that sort of changeover. And so since we're trying to also develop more housing, like we're doing incentives right now and purchasing, trying to make it easier to build the short-term rentals, this originally feedback we heard was actually from the hotel and lodging. So they do have a lodging tax, and that money goes into our Convention and Visitors Bureau and our airport that helps get people to Columbia. And so short-term rentals provide, and I imagine all of us have stayed in them, they provide a great resource to visitors for people coming in, but they're not normally targeted towards affordable housing to families that are looking for places to stay. They're usually more towards visitors. And so that's kind of what we're doing. We've already voted on this, and this is just the one about the business license and the tax, which again, like all of our hotels pay into. It then goes into help continue tourism for Columbia.
Yeah, I would just be interested if you actually polled the people who own the short-term rentals, how many of those people do both, who have a business model that does some of these under 30 days and then has the longer-term rentals as well. And I would push back a little bit in that I think those models are set up very differently. And I would want more discussions, I think, rather than with the hoteliers, with the people who were providing that. And then I would also say, I know a lot of people who are struggling to make ends meet, and they have one rental house that they use as an Airbnb to supplement their income to just get by. Mm-hmm. And so why would we, the mom and pop who has one or two Airbnbs that I'm using to help put food on the table for my family, why would I impose additional burdens on them? So I'd be really interested in the city gathering data on who's providing these short-term
And if an
rentals.
accommodation tax for a multi-unit motel is, you could argue, say, well, that takes more infrastructure, it takes more production of utility, electricity and so forth, and so you should support, it's a user tax. If someone's vacated their house and being replaced by another person or two or three using their house, how does that materially increase utilization and justify an accommodation tax?
I think it's also important to look at the taxing structure that's in there. So it's not like the short-term rental is paying the same as the hotel. It's obviously based on like their gross income that they're getting, which you're expecting is a lot less than the others. Okay. And then as far as the business license goes, so the thing with business license is that every business is required to have a business license in the city. These are things. So I think the question would be like, do we start doing exemptions for certain types of business? Because even a home-based business, you're required to have a business license for. And so then it comes to the point of like, how do we enforce this fairly? And how do we make sure that we're being the same to everybody?
Again, our guest here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri is the mayor of Columbia, Barbara Buffaloe. She is live with us here on 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 950 KWS. Folks, I do link to the short-term rental bills, 939theeagle.com. Can read them, and the mayor's absolutely correct. It's more of a formality, but nonetheless, they are still scheduled for votes tonight. Mayor Buffaloe, also on the agenda tonight. I think this is a fascinating discussion. It's not an agenda. It's not an action item. But Tanner Ott is going to go to the podium at the beginning of the meeting, and he is going to call tonight for the city to convert a section of the Colt Railroad, 939theeagle.com. You can take a look at the railroad, folks. He wants to convert a section of this into a community-focused greenway park and trail. Your thoughts on that?
I think it's exciting. I think it's also something that's been talked about for a while. So, on our master plan for our parks, we've talked about, trails, the construction of trails. And just like the MKT and the Katy, rails to trails is a frequently used tool where you're seeing underutilized rail lines that are then, they haven't been running for decades. And you see them being suggested to maybe turn into a trail so that people can walk and bike. And the section that they're specifically talking about right now, so the Colt, as a reminder, is the Columbia-owned rail line. Right. And it was originally, to get coal to our power plant, right? Mm-hmm. Others use it, obviously. We still have some freight that comes in, from the north that's coming towards and storing things at our landfill area. But the Colt, this area that they're talking about is in this really developing area of Columbia that is vibrant, the Arcade and the Stockyards district. It's going there from the Paris Road, or going kind of along Paris Road into that area. And so what I've seen, they've sent us a message about this, and I've seen some posts on social media. What they're proposing is that we kind of move that project up, and we actually think about how to allocate the funding towards that improvement from our park sales tax, and see that sort of vibrancy that helps people get around, but also just create this energetic area in downtown and north central Columbia.
Are there no choo-choos running on those rails?
There's no choo-choos running on it, Randy. I think one of the last ones, Boone County Lumber, used to bring in some, and they haven't for a while now.
Well,
so if you're over there, near Logboat, you can see all the weeds up in there, and
that arcade area is a cool area. But now I'm looking at this page on como.gov about the Columbia Colt Railroad and how it saves jobs and suppliers to the rail. So there is a functional part of the railroad, but it's on different tracks. Is that right?
It's farther north.
Okay,
and
that's what I need to understand.
Yeah, if you look at the entire length of the Colt Railroad, it runs traditionally actually from the Wabash Station all the way north, to Sykes, or I'm just blanking right now, Centralia, north there. And so if you're following it and all these places north, we have some rail areas, some sites that are available for economic development that can still be utilized, right? There's still a need for this sort of short line rail to help get goods. But as it comes into the city, it's harder and harder for safety at intersections and for development around neighborhoods. So you can see the Colt is actually running parallel to Paris Road as you're going north towards Vandiver.
Yeah.
That cross there is one of them. And so those are, it's kind of probably not, from there on, is not as susceptible to rail traffic, but north of there is.
Okay.
So the park is going to be near Posta Lafada. Is that right? The proposed park, would that be the closest location? I'm trying to.
Yeah, the area that they're talking about is that area kind of between Columbia College and the Stockyards and Arcade District. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
That sounds like that sounds like a cool idea, actually. And so it would sort of dead end north of where it dead ends now, serve some.
And I think,
right?
And eventually, the plan is, if you look at our parks master plan, there is actually a plan for eventually that whole area to turn into trail eventually. And so I think this is just kind of starting it incrementally.
Ah, cool. Okay, good. So that will be presented tonight, and I guess, like you talked, maybe moved up on the priority list depending on council's, decisions.
Yeah, and as we traditionally do, if somebody brings up something during the scheduled public comment, it's usually at the end of the meeting that council might ask for additional information from staff. And then, the progress usually is staff to come back with a report on suggestions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Food cost.
We're out of time, Mayor Buffaloe. Thank you for answering.
84-minute speech in his glasses case. It might be more than a footnote. It was October 14th, 1912. Teddy Roosevelt making a run for the White House as a candidate for the Progressive Bull Moose Party after failing to get the Republican nod. On his way out of the Gilpatrick Hotel, now the Hyatt in Milwaukee, Roosevelt was shot by a disgruntled immigrant named John Schrank, who'd been stalking the former president. The bullet hit Roosevelt in the chest, but it was slowed by the contents of his pocket, a metal spectacles case, and a copy of his 50-page speech. Roosevelt managed to make his speech and even showed off his bloodied shirt and his tattered speech as a symbol of his resilience, telling the crowd, "Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether you fully understand that I've just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose." And he carried the bullet in his chest the rest of his life. Now you know the rest of that story.
Yeah, and that would be all except for these brushes with death. These, some would say just luck. Others have said and opined that these kind of things, Teddy Roosevelt's glasses and speech, Donald Trump's head nod. Hannah, you've shared with us an analysis with like sort of a dummy head, if you will, and if he'd have cocked it a little bit differently or not cocked it and looked forward rather than sideways at that screen, we'd be talking a lot different talk.
Yep.
Right? And I think it's providential. But excuse me, I'm a knuckle-dragging believer that God has a plan. And God has, throughout human history, brought leaders who are flawed into power. Look at King David. And no doubt Donald Trump is flawed, just like all of us, except for, Hannah and Stephanie. But
okay.
No, but you know what I mean. I think that I believe this is providential, and I don't want to sound like some crazy loony, but I think that this is not just dumb luck.
I think Trump is talking to the media again this morning, and it is confirmed that he's like missing part of his ear, like he, was injured. And I do wonder how it affects him personally.
You wonder. He's so visually oriented.
Yeah, and how he approaches this week, what tone he will take. But I think anyone who kind of has that underlying sense of I am the right person, for whatever reason, I'm the right person and I'm in the right place at the right time. And I don't know how Trump could be any more convicted of that than right now. attending the funeral
Yes.
of Corey
Comparator.
Yes. And so he has been talking to the media today. Whether he will make a public appearance, I'm not sure.
And so while that is in the news, and we want to talk with Mayor of Jefferson City, Ron Fitzwater, about that, we also want to talk with him about, because he's a pharmacist, about some news you can use as you contemplate where to get your prescriptions filled. So, Ron, welcome into the program. I know it's not your usual Mayor, Monday, but we appreciate you making an extra appearance this month.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on this morning.
Let's talk about, first of all, your reaction to what you saw on Saturday and now having a little time to process it.
Well, it was just surreal. I mean, I think you've had guests on this morning talking about events that they've attended. I've attended the events with future presidents, current presidents, past presidents, and my recollection has always been they were very highly regulated events, a lot of security, nothing was left undone. I remember talking to Sheriff White here in Cole County when President Bush at the time came to Jefferson City in 2006 to talk about Medicare Part D and just everything they went through in the sweep the day before. So to think that a rooftop was left unattended like that is just beyond belief to me. Yeah. And I hope they do a thorough independent investigation to find out where the breakdown was.
Yeah, it was something. We're talking with Jefferson City Mayor Ron Fitzwater this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Ron, walk us through, because a number of years ago you were our correspondent from the RNC. So talk to us about what that's like behind the scenes and all going on. You know, we've seen it on TV, but it's whole. I'm sure it's a whole different thing to be there.
Yeah, the last one that I attended was in 2016 in Cleveland. Obviously, in 2020 with COVID, none of us got the opportunity to go to Charlotte, but I was in Tampa in 2012 and Cleveland in 2016. The security in 2016 in Cleveland was ramped up considerably. Obviously, that was the first time that President Trump won. There was a lot of contention. The barricade wall was far away from the arena where the event was held. I'm guessing it's going to just be unbelievable in Milwaukee this year. I mean, there were already protesters anticipated, which is not unusual, but there are protesters that come in. They try to keep the delegates and the alternates and people doing their business, because there is business that has to be done at these events, safe from the people on the outside. But I mean, we were directed to walk away from the security fence. They were throwing things through the fence, balloons with substances that you can imagine in them, and just all kind of things. So they will do what they can to try to keep the delegates and alternates safe. It's going to depend on people not venturing outside of that security area unless they're on their bus or with a secure group. But it's going to be very fascinating in Milwaukee, and I think Chicago in August for the other convention is going to be a nightmare as well.
Yeah, it's something else. I mean, it's surreal to have watched what unfolded Saturday and to think that within 130 yards, someone was able to crawl up on a roof. It wasn't secured. There weren't people stationed on the roof. I mean, I don't know. Let's talk about something other that's near and dear to your heart. And for folks listening, we can talk about what's going on with the Trump and the RNC and all that, and we will be talking about that throughout the week. But one of the things that impacts folks every day, anyone who's taking any medications, Ron, is the soaring price of medications. And that's just been documented and chronicled everywhere, and people feel it in their pocketbooks. And, the Federal Trade Commission has come out with a statement. It was reported on just recently in the Missouri Independent, saying that these big vertically integrated healthcare conglomerates are driving out competition in the pharmacy sector. The insurance company is in bed with the pharmacy benefit management company, and they're in bed with the hospitals, some of the hospitals and the doctors. Well, because the doctors are employed. The doctors don't mean to be in bed, but they're held to certain formulary restrictions, and you have to send the prescription to, Express Scripts or Optum or whatever. And And, everyone thinks, well, this is Amazon's big. Look at the money I saved there. These PBMs are big. Look at the money I saved there. Not necessarily true, right? Ron, I'd like you to comment on that. I mean, you're the head of the large pharmacy organization here in Missouri. What do you say about it?
I have spent my time in Jefferson City fighting these big PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, who have inserted themselves between patients, drug companies, payers, and pharmacists. I don't think you have a listener that would say that their drug costs are going down and would thank the PBMs for their diligence in addressing healthcare costs. Pharmacy costs are going up. They manipulate the system. Every time we can get legislation passed to try to tweak it a little place, they figure out some way around it. And when I first got here, when we were first dealing with it, pre-Medicare Part D, it was a problem, but not like the problem it is today. Since 2006, when Medicare Part D came in, they latched onto that system, and it is just ramped up to the point where they control all drug costs now. And, people that don't believe it or don't understand it, communities across the state, across the country are losing pharmacies. We lost 3 here in Jefferson City. Whaley's Pharmacy, an independent pharmacy group that had been in town for decades, that just could not put up with the reimbursements they were getting from the PBMs and just finally had to sell their businesses. They are impacting small-town pharmacies, and now they're starting to impact even the big chain pharmacies because of their low and slow reimbursement, the way they treat their pharmacists, the staffing. We're having shortage problems in some areas. And it's all because of the mechanism that they've set up to kind of hide their business operations from the federal government, from state government. And no one wants to take the time to dig into them. Finally, the FTC is bringing about some of the things that we've been talking about for a couple decades of what they're doing and what they're doing to drug costs. So hopefully we can propel this into more action. We will come back in 2025 with a very aggressive agenda trying to make some changes here in the state of Missouri, but they are very powerful. They deal in billions of dollars. We deal in thousands of dollars. So, I mean, they're a very formidable opposition.
Well, and then a story in the Wall Street Journal just a couple weeks ago. I sent it to you. Here's the subheadline. Mail-order drugs were supposed to keep costs down. It's doing the opposite, from the Wall Street Journal. The little subtitle, one employer was paying, get this, about $100 for a prescription for a generic antidepressant, though it could be bought elsewhere, meaning go to the pharmacist, your local pharmacist, and get it filled there, walk in and get it filled for about $12. Ron, there are better ways still for people to be very vigilant over their pharmacy costs, whether you're a small employer, a big employer for that matter, or whether you're an individual, right? And that's the message I want to get to people. Just because you're told that just send it in here for a 90-day script, whatever, that may not always be the best idea. And if you're an employer, an HR manager, a benefits coordinator, you gotta shop around. And I hope that they'll talk to you. They can call me. I mean, people have other options, and we need to keep this disruptive part of the industry alive, don't we?
Absolutely. And they need to talk to their pharmacists, although a lot of times pharmacists don't have the leverage to be able to direct them to the right spot. I mean, these plans put in programs that charge patients more if they go to their local pharmacy versus if they use the mail order facility. One of the things that they do that we have been fighting for is they will bill the health plan a higher rate than what they reimburse our pharmacists, which is called spread pricing, which the FTC report talked about, and they pocket the difference.
Yep.
But most of the contracts they sign are non-transparent contracts, which means the person paying the bill, the payer, doesn't see both sides of the transaction. Right. The PBM tells them, hey, we're looking out for you, we're driving down your health care costs, while all the time they're making money on them on the spread pricing.
Yeah, so
sometimes they tell them they're doing it, and they use that as part of their profit margin, but many times they don't let them know that they're doing that.
I mean, to simplify it, what's going on very often is the pharmacy benefit company will tell the payer, the employer, hey, you've got to use this particular drug because it's going to save you some money. Well, it may save them a little pittance, or it may not. But on the back end, they're getting often a rebate, a kickback from the pharmaceutical company as a volume buyer, and they're pocketing that difference. They're taking it rather than passing it through. Now, I thought there was some legislation that was either circulating through or had passed, but those are the kind of the shenanigans they pull, right, Ron?
Absolutely. They're making a fortune on rebates, and they go to these drug companies, especially when they come out with a new drug where they probably have billions of dollars invested in research and development costs, and they force them, if you want to get your drug on the formulary, here's the rebate that you're going to pay for us. If not, you will not get on the formulary, and patients will not have access to your drug.
Yeah.
They're forced to sign into these contracts, and then, yes, many times to the end payer, that drug is much more expensive than the drug that they're competing against.
There is mass legalized, and everyone knows about it because guess who donates among the highest donors to political operatives on both sides? The pharma and the PBMs and the big insurers, because after all, they need those kickbacks on Obamacare. And another thing that people don't know, and we'll cut it short here, another thing people don't know is that often pharmacists, the local pharmacist, and even some of the chains, it happens routinely where you are reimbursed X amount over 6 months or 3 months, and then they claw back. They just automatically take money back from you in future reimbursements. True or false?
Absolutely. Yep. That is absolutely true.
And you have nothing to say about it.
No. We have finally converted that to a forward-looking process, but it's still, the pharmacist has no control over what their reimbursement is. Many times the PBM makes more on the transaction than the pharmacist actually working with the patient.
And that's
not the way the system was set up.
And that's the way it is, ladies and gentlemen, for the Stephanie?
They certainly are. Last week we closed up with the Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P. Let's see. The S&P up 0.55, Dow 0.62, and NASDAQ 0.63. So far this morning, everything is up pretty significantly in the green this morning. And I think the betting markets have shifted pretty substantially, thinking Trump is going to fare really well after this weekend's events. And I suspect the business community and the market is reacting to that as well. Although, again, this is just Stephanie Bell's opinion and not any true financial advice. With the close of the market on Friday, we saw communication services down, but technology up big again. And we've seen that kind of all year long, in that the tech stocks, including NVIDIA, are really driving a lot of those gains. I saw this story in the Morning Brew this morning, and I had to laugh. I think it will clearly divide the show into our generational differences. Hannah, do you own a checkbook?
No.
Oh, wow.
Do you
Hey,
have
this is
checks?
great.
I don't. My husband has some on like an old account that just his name is on that we occasionally will use, but we've not purchased checks.
Now,
no.
I recently had to order new checks because I ran out, because I don't use them very often, and it took forever. I think the bank was like, "What? You need checks?" And then, and now I'm like, whatever I needed them for passed, and I don't know the next time that I'm going to need them. Well, Target is telling you to leave your checks at home. The retailer said that that they will no longer accept checks as of July 15th. Apparently, we wrote 19 billion checks in 1990. And in 2022, just 3.4 billion checks.
Wow.
Yeah, so it is a drastic decrease. The Federal Reserve has like check processing centers, and they've reduced those from like 30, I think, to just a single one. So people just aren't using checks anymore, and Target's like, it's a hassle. I think another thing that they're citing is that a lot of folks, there's a lot of fraud associated with check writing, and so for retailers having to run that down, and who's ultimately responsible for that is another reason. Apparently, Walmart and Kohl's are still accepting checks if you insist on writing a check. Macy's is also accepting checks. But I just think how quickly that has changed, and where are we headed next? I write very few checks. Randy, you still write checks?
Well, we pay our lawyers in a check. Those are big amounts. What?
I would say I'm getting more and more requests. We do a lot of wiring. People want to just wire the funds.
Costs you to wire, though.
It does cost you to wire.
I don't like this.
And the same for paying by credit card. I mean, I'd rather people wire than pay by credit card, because credit cards, you get the fees even on top of that.
But the
yeah,
payer doesn't want that.
I do. But I think that's really fascinating. And then I think a lot of people are turning back to cash. I'm not going to disclose who I know that walks around with too much cash in their pocket, but
Not me
either. But I've seen a lot of folks lately, and they say, you know what, I'm just gonna go to the bank, take out a bunch of cash, and I think people prefer that as well. So you would think that we would be moving to all credit cards away from checks, but I think there are a lot of
He's come out after some of these real incendiary events and these historical events and come out with these rap things. It's not a genre I listen to a lot, but this guy, he's calling it out. I used to listen. Back in the day when Will Smith was doing some rap, I listened to that occasionally. Well, it's rap, isn't it?
It was like pop.
Vanilla rap, whatever. I mean, come on, give me a break here.
This is really good.
I don't hear you ever playing any Frank Sinatra bumper. I mean, come on, I'm trying to be part of the team here,
Yeah.
We can't play the full thing, but no, he did a rap. He has a really famous one that went viral like a couple months ago.
And he later on says, "Hey, but it rhymes with which you missed."
Yeah.
And it's just powerful stuff. It's like I used to think, you heard what he said, I used to think the woke was just wanting to be tolerant, but they're evil, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that they're evil. I think they're just misguided. Now, some interesting news in the wake of this shooting and some of the media doubling down. A staffer for Benny Thompson, J6 chair, who tried to pass who filed a bill in April that would have prevented any security from being with Trump after he was convicted. A staffer of his said, basically, I don't condone violence, but I hope next time be a better aim. And she was fired. And now, Stephanie, they pulled Morning Joe off MSNBC this morning.
This morning, how crazy is that? I think
Holy cow.
I think they've probably seen Twitter and seen what these folks are saying, and essentially, folks are asking, isn't it an admission on their part of knowing that their folks, their panelists, their guests might say something absolutely crazy? And there were a couple people who said the wrong thing this weekend, and it's been played over and over and over. And I think they knew it's going to be us next.
And here's what they said. Here's just a little bit of what they've said in the past.
We're going to go in there. We're going to... This is just a warning to you Trumpers. Be careful. Walk lightly. And for those of you who are soldiers, make them pay.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be? Does one of us have to come out alive?
That's Kamala Harris. I mean, ladies and gentlemen,
irresponsible, isn't it?
There is no comparison. I am so tired of the whataboutism from the left. Well, what about Donald Trump? He said, I'm getting a text this morning from a guy named Alan. Alan, call me. You're flat out wrong. Well, he said that there's good people on both sides. In context. And the Washington Post finally came out and said what Donald Trump said in Charlottesville was there are good people on the side of keeping the Robert E. Lee statue, not the neo-Nazis. He made that clear in that press conference. And there are good people on the people that want social justice, not the people that burned down the cities. He made it perfectly clear. The likes of Joe Scarborough, the New York Slime, the Washington Post. It would take me the rest of the program to talk about politicians who tried to mischaracterize what he said. You cannot compare in scope or depth or vehemence what has been said about this man with all of his flaws, which we have regularly called out. I loudly call them out all the time. And I do.
And you take heat from some of the audience.
And I take heat from you guys.
The right-wingers in our audience.
I try to call balls and strikes, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sorry. The heated rhetoric that this guy has taken, the veiled, basically, wink, wink, go get him. You can't get him. And they haven't been very successful in the courts of any substantive amount. So a crazy loon 20-year-old who, yes, he's a registered Republican, but he donated to a progressive advocacy super PAC. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take much for a crazy loon who spends time on a guns and demolition a YouTube site to say, time to go get him. He's a threat to democracy. I mean, come on, guys. You're smarter than that. Don't denigrate yourself. You lose our respect. Look at the facts. Okay, I'm sorry. I did it again.
I think I know you're frustrated, and I think a lot of the audience is too. what I don't want people to overlook, and you bring, and that soundbite, by the way, you played from, I believe it was Johnny Depp.
It's Johnny Depp who said, "When's the last time that someone assassinated an actor assassinated a president?"
Yeah, that's really
Madonna. This was the day of or day after his inauguration. I've had thoughts about blowing up the White House. That's not the same as Donald Trump saying "Crooked Joe" or "Sleepy Joe" or "Lock Hillary up." That's not the same as take her out.
And the other thing we should point out is the focus also should be on how did that individual you mentioned, the 20-year-old, get up on a roof, and that is a big issue. We had a lot of calls yesterday on the Sunday morning program, Columbia Buzz here on the Eagle, Al Germond and I, and a lot of them were local, but people remembered when Ronald Reagan came to town. And of course, someone tried to assassinate him in 1981, but when he came to Columbia, the town was locked down. The security. Now, I know he was the president. Donald Trump is a former president, but the reality is it should not matter. The town was locked down. The manholes were sealed up. There were Secret Service people under the manholes. Anybody that was at Hickman High School, you folks remember it, Fairview High School, you weren't allowed to leave the school until Mr. Reagan, the president of the United States, was in the air. And I don't know if protocol has changed, but there's just no excuse there's no excuse about a guy getting up on a roof like that. That's just 2018. It was like a fortress at the airport when I saw President Trump. I mean, it was a fortress. I don't understand that, and I think I don't want to lose sight. I know you're concerned about all the other stuff. The security issue also has to be.
Well, there's been some very good reporting by Susan Crabtree of Real Clear Politics. She's been reporting throughout after the weekend, yesterday into this morning, about her talk with insiders in the Secret Service. One of them is that they didn't shoot until after the shooter engaged because the rules of engagement say you don't shoot until there's a shot taken. That's what she's reporting. It's on X. She says, the blowback against the Secret Service started within the hour of the assassination. A source within the service community tells Real Clear Politics that the agency rules of engagement in this situation are to wait until the president is fired upon to return fire. Here's her quote of an insider. Quote, "You want to take a shot, then find out the guy was holding a telescope?" Quote, "The Secret Service is by nature reactive, and you better be right when you do react or you're effed."
Wow.
Quote, "The counter snipers are highly trained and extremely accurate." So this is a legitimate reporter. Now, of course, you won't see this on the New York Slime. You won't see this on the Washington Post. You won't see this on MSNBC. It takes one of the new independent media, ladies and gentlemen.
Really good. It's interesting reporting, but okay, let's just say that's the case. Let's just say that, and it sounds like she's done a really nice job. If they don't want, if they have to wait until the suspect fires a shot, why don't you take the president off the stage, the former president off the stage, or get him down? I mean, They saw the guy up there on the roof with a gun. I mean, and people, I watched Fox this weekend, and BBC had it as well. There were people pointing to the man on the roof and telling the police. I mean, multiple witnesses said that.
Here's another thing that has caught a lot of criticism. And again, this is not me. This is people within the agency and people who are experts looking at Kim Cheadle, appointed in 22 after the J6 thing and after there were people hiring prostitutes in, was it Colombia or El Salvador? There were Secret Service agents that, and a lot of, problems there. Here's what she said on CBS last year.
But I'm very conscious as I sit in this chair now of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates and ensure that we are developing and giving opportunities to everybody in our workforce, and particularly women.
This is not to denigrate women, but it's sort of why some of us are concerned about most women being in the front lines of military service. There's a difference there. It relates to the Title IX discussions and trans women playing in women's sport. I mean, come on, there's biological differences. Some have said this young lady who was there around the president, former president on Saturday, she's of shorter stature. And yeah, she's a woman, and I'm sure she has a great role in the Secret Service, but is that a proper role for her to be there as a primary guard for someone that's 6'2" tall. By the way, most of the people, it was reported by Susan Crabtree, that were around him had been were temporaries because they diverted the regulars to Jill Biden. She was doing something. And what she's also reported is that the current protocol is that former presidents get much less resource. So you talk about who's on top of the buildings. Former president, I don't care if he's Donald Trump, whether he's been demonized, whether he's been, called Hitler, whether he's been called existential threat to democracy. He's a former president. Protocol says he doesn't get what a president
you
should.
are former president, but the presumptive, and let's be honest, he's going to be the nominee. I mean, I still have some serious questions. I mean,
it's crazy.
And this is not anything. I mean, Gerald Ford in 1975 had 2 different assassination attempts. I remember those. It was 2 women, by the way. Reagan was shot. I mean, it's just it is a scary.
Obama had threats against him. Bill Clinton did.
It's just outrageous.
President Obama had a lot of death threats. He absolutely did.
Real quick, lightning round. I got 30 seconds for each of you. Chris, you're up first. Go.
When I saw this and everybody's like, what kind of security is this? I remember going to the Columbia Regional Airport for the air shows. And the Columbia Police Department had guys with rifles, snipers, guys with binoculars on the rooftops.
Sure.
Just to protect us.
Yeah.
In case somebody would decide to do something. And this engagement deal, I said that to my brother. He said, why wouldn't they shoot first? I said, well, look what they did with our soldiers over in Afghanistan. And the guy's pointing a gun, don't shoot him. Wait till he fires.
I was told that by civilian people over there, that, people that were training SWAT team members who were over in Afghanistan and Iraq. We were told not to shoot unless we are shot at. I mean, it's crazy.
Isn't that sad?
Thanks. Matt, you're up next. Go.
Yeah, real fast. I agree with your points exactly. Number one, why we have a Secret Service agent that's 5'5" trying to stop a bullet for a guy that's 6'2", 6'3". Number two, as far as don't shoot him the shot at first. Imagine if he did only have a telescope and he was the bystander on the rooftop was assassinated. That guy's family would be billionaires.
You're right, but the problem, I think we can admit, the problem was long. And Susan Crabtree reported on this. There's a line of sight thing that the Secret Service lead goes. She stands where the president will be, he or she, and they look at line of sight. And wherever there's an elevated line of sight, you have people on the building. Yep. Oh, but he's a former president, and he's not the current president, and he's a candidate. So protocol, process. That's why we hate the deep state, the regulatory state.
The guy was only 200, 250 yards away, which is not that far away, and the guys on the Secret Service have scopes on their guns. They can clearly see he's holding a gun pointed at the president. I mean, any cop having a gun pointed at them would shoot first. Yeah. So I don't know what the holdup was.
All right, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
And I would add George W. Bush. He was not the president yet. He was governor of Texas. He was going to be the nominee. I met him and interviewed.
Appreciate that. I'm sure there'll be lots more to talk about. I'll be out tomorrow. I know, Stephanie, there's things we didn't get to today you're going to cover tomorrow. There's other news even breaking now, but right now there's some very important local news coming out of Jefferson City. John, what's going on and what do we know?
Well, we just talked to Jefferson City Police, and they tell us they are looking for a presumed hit-and-run driver. Officers were called out about 6:30 this morning for a report of a body that was spotted in the 3600 block of Highway 50 near Capitol Mall. And the police say a bicyclist was apparently fatally hit by a car. Investigators say they need your help and say the car will have obvious damage. There's no description of any vehicle on this, but they confirm apparent bicyclist fatally hit by a vehicle.
I've seen this morning there's been a lot of folks who witnessed the aftermath, I think, driving down the road, and there's a lot of chatter on Facebook about what's happening, what's going on. So this is a follow-up to a lot of that.
You know, where we lived in Northeast Missouri for a few years, there were no shoulders on the roads. We sort of gave up bicycling, and we just got our bikes rehabbed and fixed up, and I'm all excited about it. But I think for anyone out there who is either on a bicycle, running on the road, taking a walk on the road, or if you're driving, be careful. Please just keep your eyes out. Keep your eyes off your text, off of your phone. It's just tragic motorcyclists, I think, are probably a little vulnerable too. I mean, because
big time.
Yeah.
We've seen that repeated. Matter of fact, there was a number of several years ago. There was a Jefferson City man who was killed on Missouri Boulevard by a driver who had looked down to look at a text or something.
Oh man, the carnage that happens when a bicycle meets a car, it never works out well.
And this was a motorcycle this time.
But that was a motorcycle, yeah. Wow. Okay, well, hopefully they'll be able to find out whoever did that, and I don't think you're not going to be able to escape if you're listening, and if you did that, you will be found because there were certainly witnesses, no doubt about that. It's a shame. So we've been talking a lot about what went on Saturday, but I think looking forward to the convention, certainly it's fair to say that I think that certainly the people who are and have been firmly on the Trump train were galvanized by this incident and will be even further motivated. I think it remains to be seen, although I would not doubt that there's going to be some of those who are independents and I don't know, can I pull the trigger? Can I? Well, bad choice of words. Can I pull the lever for Donald Trump? I wasn't so sure. I think those kind of people might be in a different camp this morning, Stephanie.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think so, and we're expecting speeches from Nikki Haley and